nothing. I mean, it is a great tool that is accepted by all the right people. If you find the right examiner, and I'm not the only one, so I'm not selling that story. Um, I have a great relationship with Harris County Sheriff's Department, obviously. Because of that, I have a great relationship with the District Attorney's Office. And those are the things that you want to know about a polygraph examiner when you find one. Because you can go pay as little or as much as you want, and when you show that detective or when you show that DA and they say, yeah, he's not credible, you just wasted a whole lot of money and a lot of effort. So I would find those things out before. And I mean, you guys have listservs and all that stuff that kind of tell you, all the different people that you want to try to access. Let's see. Preparing for a polygraph. Okay. There are things that definitely can get in the way. Your client is probably not going to come and tell you that he's addicted to drugs. Some do. He's probably not going to tell you that he smoked a joint before he came to your office, though some will. And he's probably not going to tell you that he's going to smoke one right before he comes to mine, but often they will. Okay. I mean, these things matter. When you talk about inconclusive, so if you look at the studies, and there's a wide variety of studies out there about polygraph, but if you brought them all together and got a number that it's probably 85% accuracy is the most common number that you're going to find in the research. So that leaves you 15%. How are we looking on time? Okay. So in that 10 or 15% that's left over, there are typically reasons that are maybe easy to combat is not the right word for it, but to hopefully be able to change. People that are using illegal drugs, I mean, they're going to have an effect on your physiology, plain and simple. And that's what we're reading to make a determination about you. I had a lady just this last week who, the things that we put on your fingers, what we call the EDA, I mean, that's the most responsive that we have. We get the best indicator from that thing. And when it looks like somebody just pulled the plug at the hospital and you get a flat line across there, there's something going on with that person because that's just not natural. But I'll have that from time to time, and obviously the first thing I'm thinking is, she's probably hopped up on hydrocodone or she had a few joints before she came in here, and that's probably accurate. But, that's what you want to preach to your clients. Don't take anything before you take a polygraph. Tell them it'll cause them to fail. But will it? No. What it will do is cause inconclusives. Let me just tell you that joint has no idea that this question is important and this question is not. It's not going to control how and what you respond to. Psychotropic drugs, they give us a lot of problems. I mean, their job is to keep you from responding to stimuli, being panicked, afraid, all those things that calms you down. And that's really bad for us. Most of America is on some kind of antidepressant these days, so just that you're on it doesn't matter. We do ask questions to kind of see your responses prior to, we call them STEM tests, to see if you're going to be responsive at all. So if your client does take medications, that by itself is not reason enough not to take a polygraph. They can prevent them from responding, but they don't always. Most antidepressants are probably not going to be strong enough. However, some people take pretty strong doses. But people who are on narcotics, it's just almost a waste of time to send them. People that take pain medications and stuff like that, yes.
I mean, they're really big. Let's say they're on something most of the time, but their new norm is now on that drug, and then they don't take it for your test. Is that not going to negatively affect it?
So all I can tell you is that you have to send them and see. So when I do homicide for Harris County, I mean, we don't get business owners and attorneys and bankers that come down and take polygraphs. And these are people on the streets who have a $15 dollar a day habit. So they come in, and where you're going with that is pretty accurate. If they're doing this stuff all the time, their body may go ahead and respond. And so I'm not going to tell homicide detectives, we're just going to have to let this one slide. He does drugs. I'm going to see if they're responsive. So I'm going to give that STEM test first. And if they're responsive, then I'll do a polygraph. If they're not responsive, then I'm going to tell that detective this would be a waste of time, and it wouldn't do you any good to present it as pass or fail anyway. So it depends. It really does depend in that. For a criminal polygraph, it's $750.
Along those lines, I wanted to,
Sure.
like, almost all of my clients cannot make it to your office because they're
Yeah.
incarcerated. With the appropriate court order, you go to them.
So, because I contract with the sheriff's department, I can pretty freely get in and out of most of the jails and do polygraphs. But any of your trusted polygraph examiners, if you get a court order, can go down and they'll provide them a room where they can do a polygraph. It sucks. 1200 Baker Street, for example, they're going to put you in a place where it's windows on all sides with a little bit of foam spray on it, and you hear everybody outside yelling and screaming at each other and calling your client a narc and all sorts of other stuff. I mean, it is not a good setting. However, for those whose clients is at 701, tons of privacy, you're away from everybody, and it's a great situation. So, yeah, if you have somebody at 1200 Baker, it's how the situation is going to be for you. I would be willing to bet that 5 of those 20 inconclusive have come from tests done at 1200 Baker. And I'm not just saying that. There's so much distraction. Yes. I do. It's expensive, but I do. Yeah. It really depends where I'm going. I mean, you have to think of like anybody else. I make money. I usually add a couple of $100 to go to Fort Bend, if it's close. I have a guy that's in Brazoria. I try not to go. I try to force people to come to me for that reason. I mean, you lose lots of business, Yeah, I go. It depends on the miles. I would probably go for 1,000 to Brazoria. And it's case by case. I don't have a set dollar. It really depends on what my schedule's like, things of that nature. I stay really, really busy. It's hard to go out. But I've been to probably every jail or prison in Texas, every unit. So I do it, but it's kind of a pain. So a pain is expensive. So. All right, moving on. Any more questions? Yes. Yeah, you mean for your client? Sure, yeah. Typically, attorney's going to give me a call, go over some of the details. What I ask most of them to do is to shoot me an email because I'm going to talk to 10 attorneys probably today. And I'm going to mix things up so I have that email to go back to and look at so I can get the details of test time. And the earlier you give me information, the sooner I can give you questions to look at. Boy, let me say this to you guys while I'm on it before we have to shut down. Never, ever, ever, ever tell your clients exactly what questions that they're going to face on the polygraph. Discuss with it in terms of, here's our situation, we're going to cover this allegation. But if you tell them, hey, he's only going to ask you these 3 questions, what do you think is going to happen when he walks in and I ask a series of 8 questions, all of which matter, first and foremost? He's going to give all his attention to the only 3 we don't want him to give all his attention to, and he's going to have a false positive. So you create a huge obstacle for any polygraph examiner when you're preparing your client and you're telling them, these are the only 3 questions he's going to ask. Well, that is the hardest thing for me to overcome. And I have to throw you under the bus. So, all right. Anybody? Yes. Well, to be quite honest, most of the time you don't. Where I am often, well, not often, doesn't happen often, but I've been proven twice, particularly in 10 years, that the result I got just wasn't accurate. But that comes once the trial goes and evidence is submitted and it either supports the findings or it doesn't. It's really hard to know what a false positive is. Most of the time you're never going to know the answer to that. But we know they happen. And listen, I'm not selling perfection, guys. What I'm telling you is it's the best we got. And it is the best you've got. So, let's see. Pregnant. You cannot send people to our office who are pregnant. Just can't happen. They can't take a polygraph, and we do have to ask. Well, there's multiple reasons. As you can imagine, any law typically comes from something that happened. So a woman has miscarriage after polygraph. She blames polygraph. She sues polygraph examiner, and that's why insurance rates are so high, et cetera. That's one reason. The second is you have a whole other set of... Well, if you're pregnant. I mean, if anything that causes stress on a pregnancy is dangerous. And it really is just that basic. I mean, it's that simple. But also, depending on how far along you are, you have a whole other heartbeat. You have a nervous system in there, all of which is going to be responding, So it's No can do. 3 weeks after pregnancy, that's as soon as we can do it. This is the part we were talking about. The two most important things to tell your clients: don't research. Secondly, remember not to go over the questions with your client. Myths about polygraph, we talked about that too. Medications can't make you pass or fail polygraphs. They do create lots of inconclusives. Nervous, everybody's nervous when they take a polygraph. Nerves do not cause you to fail polygraphs. You reacting to the fact that you're nervous can cause you to have an outcome that should not happen. Good liars, well, that's probably the biggest myth there is. If I had a nickel for every wife who called me and said, my husband is the best liar in the world, and I tell them, no, he's just good at lying to you. Yeah. Because that's the reality. They can't convince themselves of the lie, and when they're taking a polygraph, that's who they're up against. It's them against them. And they know that they're lying, whether you've been convinced otherwise or not. So biggest nightmare for me is a sociopath. The way they think, it's just different from the normal person. When you talk about false positives and false negatives particularly, these guys, how do I know who they are? I don't. And so it just happens.
We're just about to.
All right.
But if you got, I don't want to cut
I
you.
think those 3 or 4 slides on the same thing. Different type of people with bipolar, schizophrenia. Bipolar not as much, because most of you probably don't know, and maybe you do. People think bipolar is she flipped on me today, but tomorrow she loves me. That's not bipolar. Bipolar is long bouts of depression followed by long bouts of highs. So typically in a polygraph, that's not a big issue. The medication that they take for that can be a problem. It isn't always. Panic attacks, so let's be sure we understand that that's not nervousness. That can and has happened during a polygraph. I've had people pass out, literally. And I'm not a doctor, and that is not cool. Drug addictions, that's a big problem. But I think I didn't answer somebody's question who asked about people who are on drugs and they get off for a polygraph. Yeah, that's probably going to turn out, I think it was you maybe, that's probably going to turn out bad because they're going to have the shakes, or they're not going to be able to concentrate or pay attention. So I don't know that you're even helping the situation. But being on the drug can have its own effect. Here's the reality. Everybody can't take a polygraph just because we need it. They just can't. Most can't. And I think, guys, that's just about it. Countering an agency polygraph. Oh, so if you guys do want to have your client take a polygraph after they failed one with the agency, if you can get it, getting the charts and the video is pretty crucial. One, to me or another examiner being able to say, hey, this is what went wrong. Unfortunately, most examiners are going to challenge any exam they didn't do. I will not do that. If it's a good polygraph, it's a good polygraph. I'd rather advertise good work than talk about how we suck. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's it. Any last questions? Yes, and I have a stack of cards. And for any of you who like it, because I'm a guy, so I'm kind of into this kind of crap, I made coins. You guys are welcome to have them if you collect that kind of stuff. It's a box full. If you want one, take it. If you don't, that's fine.